This section with the printing and a little bit of the resolution referring to that is showing you this image here at 200 and I'm sorry, at 72 and 300 dpi. DPI being the lines per inch, but the idea for printing and using an image on the web is where this comes into play or into contrast. So when you take a look at this image of this pelican, the one that's highlighted at 72, is a little blurry on the screen. This would only be if it was printed. It would look okay on the screen at a certain size, and if you enlarged it or tried to print it, you would get the pixelation that comes through, and it's representative of how large the file is. So when you're doing the internet, it's at 72 to keep a quick file loading on your website. But for the printing, the standard is 300. Sometimes they can get away with 200, but for general scanning of images as well as setting up or starting a file, it's always good to start at a high resolution, and 300 is perfect. Anything beyond that, sometimes the printers won't be able to pull that off or print that piece. So when you take a look at the phrase or the acronym DPI, stands for dots per inch, and what that's referring to again is this. Here's another image a little bit higher at 96. The reason it's at 72 is most of the monitors have that screen resolution built into it. So to show an image at 300 on a web page, for example, is just overkill, and it takes longer for the image to download or load up on the screen. So these two images, they're close. I mean, this is 300, even though this is off of the web. You can see the pixelation around the side. But the dots per inch is just referring to it, and it's almost related similarly to the pixels per inch on Photoshop. So when you take a look at these pieces representing this image, the farther it gets, for example, it traces its roots back to the idea of printing, four-color printing process. And I just switch over to see if I can keep this here for Photoshop to show this to you. Just tap this over. There's two images in here, one photograph and one from the internet. And when you take a look at it, it's 8.5 by 11 on this image. If I were to go to File, New, just in Photoshop to show you this as being the raster-based segment, it has all these presets, the vertical line here just separating the recent files that you have, and then the photo or print. And then it has all the images for web. So if I click on the web, the default right here is at 72, already setting it up. But like I said, if you're doing an image, it's always good to start at 300, and then if you're going to make it for the web, go ahead and reduce the image size to 300. But print is at a 300 pixels per inch, which is what this image is. So when you zoom into this particular file, put them right next to each other, and just zoom in close here, and just hold the space bar. You can see that the resolution from here, it's not too bad. You can still see the pixels up that close. Down here, the magnification is at 677%. The images look okay. Just double-click the hand tool, go back, and take this photograph and just try to make it as large as this picture, and we'll start to see the pixelation. So this resolution will start to get just a little bit pixelated, a little blurry in here as you see this. The resolution again is at 300, so you're trying to take whatever image you have and stretch it up, making it to fill 300 pixels per inch, so it's a smaller file size. And to show you the lines per inch, if I go to image size and just change this, this is the image so far as how large it is. So if I change this to inches, you can see that the page is 8.5 by 11 at this 300 resolution. And if I change this to 72, you'll see that it goes from 24 megabytes and it reduces it down to 130. And you always, if you do this in Photoshop, you always want to duplicate the image so that you don't ruin your original or save over your original file. But I'm just going to really put this at 10 just so you can see the difference of it. It'll make the image much smaller. So that's on screen. That's pretty good size of what you would see at 10 pixels per inch. But if you zoom in, you can start to see, and here it is in the 10 pixels. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 within this inch right here. So that's where the lines per inch related to printing also relate directly to um, Photoshop and also the internet and the printing process. So it's giving you that. The other items that are on here that I just want to touch with you to help you out on this is the printing, the cutting, and the registration marks that we kind of talked about a little bit. This is the image, and as we do some of the package design, it'll show you some of things that were printed, and the trim line is represented by these crop marks, which are also registration marks are for color. Trim lines or crop marks would be right along this edge here to cut this out. And this photograph of the beach scene is to be printed all the way to the edge. So it has to have the image overlap it so that when it goes through the printing process, it jogs the paper a little bit. And sometimes it might leave a white line if it was exactly that size. So you go over 1/8 of an inch for the bleed to make sure that happens, cuts that piece over. And then these segments show the color bars, but also this circle with the plus sign is the registration mark. So it has the CMYK colors. Well, most of this information prints to the outside edge of this, so it can be cut away, but the printer can see that the colors are lined up in registration and also printing enough ink, and they can take the density of the ink to make sure it's printing on the offset printing. And this is just showing the registration marks. There's one for each plate. And if it's CMYK, then they would have 4 plates that would have these registration marks. It's just showing that you can't see any color overlap on the one on the right-hand side, a little bit of the yellow and magenta coming over, so it's just showing the registration being off on that part. So that's the printing section for it. Come down to this section here. And so the part that has the crop marks right here, these little corner pieces, is if a page gets larger. So they're doing pages like the yearbook where the images or some of the text may be coming off the edge. This red line right here is the bleed, and the crop marks would trim right there. This margin is just where everybody likes to make sure that everything fits within there so that nothing accidentally gets cut off. So text or pictures of importance. But that's the visual definition of that part. Okay. And then this last couple pieces here, this is just a die cut showing the outside pieces cut, so it's a separate piece that's printed. Sometimes it's a dotted perforated line if it's going to be cut and torn or folded, and then if it is folded, this particular section here is just showing a package design, pizza box, Kleenex box, all these type of things that have the outside piece cut with all the flaps, but then the inside lines are the part that are scored and just folded over to try to illustrate that. And this piece showed a little bit before is showing the package design of this carton for here. And you can see that it does have the cut line on the top. You can kind of see a little bit in the line, the scored lines, or even on the back side of it a little bit. Same with this package, which we'll try a little bit later, having you crate and cut this piece out. So this is all the flaps, and they have to take in consideration the distance or the thickness of the material, in this case the cardboard. And just real quickly, this is just a simple piece here. So if this was going to be the simple definition, is if it's cut, it's just separating the two pieces, nothing happening. But if it's going to be scored using a straight edge, in this case I'll just freehand it, but this is just a X-Acto knife. And you're not cutting all the way through it, but you're just making a crease. And most of the times it's printed, but in a mock-up situation, this part is cut. This card is just scored. So you're actually just tearing the fibers along one side of the paper, nothing on the other side. But that gives you the part that allows to be scored. So any paper sculpture that you may have seen in an art side would have that, but in the printing side, it's just building those sections together from there. Okay, so just a quick look at all these items here. trying to show you the registration with all the different print resolutions that you would have.